Hey everyone, it's Santino with Beyond the Cast. Today, I'm so excited to have a new friend, but I've known this man for a couple of years. We've followed him on social media, love his entrepreneur spirit, and ran into him at a trade show this year down in Orlando. Pete Holman, thanks for coming on. And I just got to hear when we talked in Orlando, I feel like there was just way more that we had in common besides golf and like me reaching out to you just to talk about your product. But thanks for coming on board, brother.
I'm excited to be here, and I love Colorado and fellow Coloradoonians. So represent Mountain Town.
Yeah. Are you a native?
No, but I've been here since I was 7.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so close.
Well, so my initial, I guess let's talk about how we met. So a few years ago, I saw this new golf trainer that, you're the face of that. And you guys have added a pretty extensive ambassador list. Well, I won't say extensive, but some really top tier guys that are doing well in the PGA. But you started the Golf Forever trainer, right? Or you're one of the founders, or can you tell me the story about that?
Yeah. So Golf Forever, it's an interesting story because Golf Forever is an app and it delivers workouts for golfers. Golfers are notoriously known for not warming up properly, not keeping their muscles in shape during the off season. And of course they want to hit it longer and farther every season, but they're not keeping in shape. So a chiropractor in Aspen started seeing clients, and he recognized certain things about every client that was a golfer that was dysfunctional. They lacked mobility, they lacked core strength, they lacked balance. And he developed an app to help address these needs. He brought me in as a content provider when I lived in Aspen, and I'm a physical therapist and strength coach, so I've got a background in content. And at one point, I had developed a product, an asymmetrical bar training product called the Ripcore FX. It was licensed to TRX, and it became known as the TRX Rip Trainer. And so I'd done that for a few years, and then
I remember that.
So back in the day, and then our TRX and we parted ways. And I sat on the idea. I had a non-compete clause for 2 years, but after that, I was open to doing anything. And the Golf Forever team approached me and said, "Hey, Pete, maybe we should license out the TRX Rip Trainer and use it for our app. And we can start developing golf-specific exercises using this bar training device," which is amazing for any rotational athlete, but especially golfers. And jokingly, I said, we should make our own and do it better. And there was a long pause in the room because I was completely joking. And the CEO of the company, Dr. Jeremy James, said, "Wait, can we do that?" And I said, "Yeah, we can. There's no patent, and my non-compete is over." So we started to pursue this, and a year later we launched at the PGA show in Orlando. This was in 2022, and it went gangbusters. People, the second they see you moving with a bar and resistance and a rotational plane of motion, they get it. Golfers understand basic biomechanics. And I think we sold 600 units, which is pretty good for a live show in 2 days.
Oh, it's fantastic.
And from there, it's just been lights out. We've got Scotty Scheffler as our #1 endorsed athlete. We've got Justin Leonard. We've got Zach Johnson. We just signed Tom Kim. So if you're a golfer out there and you haven't checked out the Golf Forever app and the Golf Forever Swing Trainer, do yourself a favor. You've got one, right? I saw it.
No, it's here. We use it all the time. I got the app and everything. It's money. So I think the thing that drew me initially to, reaching out is I saw the content that you guys were creating. Obviously you're great in front of a camera. You know how to, not just tell a story, but deliver proper messaging and, all that kind of stuff. But was that part of the plan? Cause 2022, we're talking fresh out of COVID. Were you guys just filming all that stuff and bankrolling it, or what was that process like?
It was fast and furious. Golf Forever, it looks, by the way, if you're an entrepreneur out there, there's a lot of smoke and mirrors, and you know this well. You want to look bigger than you are. You want to look more polished than maybe you feel behind the scenes, but it's that finished look. So we were scrambling around. We didn't have content. We had to first get the product, and then we had to film tons of content so that we had a robust library in the app, and then we had to push it out there. So this all happened, it took a year to develop the product. And by the way, most people look at it and they say, "Oh, it's a stick and a cord." How hard is that to develop? Trust me, develop a product and have it manufactured, and you'll understand how hard it is to develop a product that's consistent and viable. So yeah, we rushed all that stuff out, but because I've done content for a long time now, and because I'm a strength coach and physical therapist, I mean, that's what I do well. Get me on podcasts, okay. Other canned content, I'm okay. Salesy stuff, I'm okay. But get me coaching somebody or coaching the audience on how to do movement specific training. And that's my sweet spot. That's what I love doing. So that was no problem.
Right. Well, this year we bump in. Well, I went and you were overwhelmed by so many people coming up. I've seen the booth change too, to see what the booth was compared to where it is now.
It's crazy, right?
But we got into some conversations about like your background. So I see that you do kickboxing. You got a fighting background. So do I. So that right there was a big draw. But can you tell me a little bit, aside from what you've done on the physical therapy and the strength coaching, what's your fighting background?
Yeah, so I love that you asked this question, because really it is the origin story of my entire career was martial arts. So everybody loved Bruce Lee. Like back in the day, for me, it was Arnold Schwarzenegger, it was Michael Jordan, and it was Bruce Lee. And I wasn't going to be Michael Jordan, that's for sure. I wasn't going to be Arnold Schwarzenegger, didn't have the physique. And Bruce Lee, it was the time and place, and I was working at a health club in the late 80s, and I was on the maintenance staff, and I was mopping the racquetball court number 7. Court number 7 was across from court number 8, and court number 8 was where the Taekwondo team practiced. And so almost like a Chinese Kung Fu movie, I'm mopping the court every night. It's the cleanest court in the world. And finally, the instructor opened up the door and he said, "Put down the mop and come train with us." And I said, okay. And that started my martial arts journey. It was 2 years later, I tested for my black belt, which was kind of unheard of to get a black belt in 2 years. Nobody does that. And nobody should really be able to do that. But I trained 8 days a week. I mean, everything the coach said to do, he said, stretch 20 minutes a day. I stretched 40 minutes. He said, do strength and conditioning. I did, And so the next thing I test for my black belt. And my instructor says, "Pete, I think you've got a chance to try out for the national team." And I said, "Coach, I've been doing this for 2.5 years. Are you kidding me?" He's like, I'm telling you, I think you've got the qualities that we look for in a national team member. And so I said, all right, I'll compete and try out. And I made my first national team and went to Kuala Terengganu, Malaysia, and competed in the World Championships there in 1994. 3 years later, I was the team captain at the World Championships in St. Petersburg, Russia, and I took a bronze in that event. So that was everything changed in my life when I started doing martial arts. I wanted to get bigger, faster, stronger, and more athletic and more explosive on the mats. So I immersed myself into strength and conditioning. That was the launch of my personal training, degree and career. And then I was constantly injured because you've done martial arts before. And, when you start sparring, you're just constantly jacked up. So it's how do I rehabilitate myself? How do I get back on the mats faster? And that spawned my interest in physical therapy. And so the next thing you know, I'm a licensed physical therapist. I'm a certified strength and conditioning specialist, and I'm a U.S. national Taekwondo champion. And it was a really good kind of match of all aspects of competing at a high level. The training, the rehabilitation, and the mindset of becoming a winner.
Right. Well, it sounds like you absolutely have that entrepreneur, but like hustle mentality too. Like, sounds like when you get into something, you're not an on the fence guy. You're either all in or you're not.
Yeah. I don't know if that's good or bad, but it's good. It's definitely good.
Yeah. Well, I understand. I'm very much the same, but also like I question, like, is that good or bad? It just depends on what you put it into. I'd love to hear a little bit more to kind of rewind about you growing up. You said you moved to Colorado when you were 7. And, kind of tell me about your upbringing, prior to the martial arts, and, what kind of home you grew up in, and if there's any cool stories in there.
Yeah. The coolest story about my upbringing is that I lived in Inglewood for a while when we first moved here, and it was kind of a rough neighborhood. My sister got hanging out with, the wrong people, and my mom was literally like, the only way I can get her away from these guys is we're going to move. So we moved to Littleton. And at that time, Littleton was like Highlands Ranch. If anybody that knows Colorado, Highlands Ranch was just tumbleweeds. There was nothing out there. And so we lived on a small ranch in Littleton, South Littleton. And I grew up on a ranch, and we boarded horses as a way to kind of get some accessory income. And so guess who cleaned all the horse stalls and shoveled and raked and repaired fence posts? And what I found is, as I started my martial arts career, I was just getting into strength and conditioning, but I had been doing farm work 7 days a week, hauling railroad ties and road base in a wheelbarrow. And when I started my strength and conditioning career, it was like, man, my grip strength. People would say, hey, just hang on this bar. I want to see, what you can do. And most people that have never hung on a bar, they're 10, 20 seconds, maybe 30. And I'm like 2 minutes in. I said, well, how long do we go for? And they said, oh, you're good. And their jaws were on the ground. Like they've never, I was a young kid. I was 16 years old and I could hang for 2 minutes. And so that farm work was really kind of the backbone of my core strength and kind of my foundational base of strength. And so for folks out there that are wanting to get strong and do it fast and do it functionally, don't forget your farm type lifting, your deadlifts, your loaded carries, all that, your pushes, your pulls, all that stuff is money when it comes to strength and conditioning.
So, you grew up here, went to school, high school, did all that kind of stuff. Did you play sports or?
I did. So here's another story. And I guess we'll dive into this. So because, every success story usually has some pitfalls and some hurdles and adversity. So I was bullied in middle school. And I don't know what was going on with me. People look at me today and they, I'm 6'2", 225 pounds, martial artist. They're like, come on, Holman, there's no way you were bullied. I'm like, I was bullied and it was bad. I got locked in lockers, humiliated in front of other, my friends, in front of other girls. It just was terrible. And I think that rolled into my high school years, and I started hanging out with the wrong people. I was smoking and drinking and drugging and I was off. And my junior year in high school was the worst, probably the worst year of my life. And that summer, the last day of school, I'm packing up my locker and I'm going out to the parking lot. I mean, last day of school, and it's on, like we're going to go party. Like we've never partied before. And I walk by the strength and conditioning room at Littleton High School, and I hear these weights clanking around. And I was like, that is so weird. Like, why would somebody be training? It's the last day of school, like I'm going to party.
Yeah.
And so just for a second, I kind of stopped by the strength room and peered in the window, and I saw the football team in there. It was Jeff Musselman and Ron Kaiser and Chuck Pollard. And I was like, man, those dudes are beasts. And I kind of got intimidated and I just backed away from the door. And just then the door swings open and it's the strength coach. And he's like, what's up, son? I just was frozen. And he said, well, are you going to sit there staring through the window? Or are you going to step inside and train with champions? And after urinating on myself, I said, I'll step inside and train with champions. And that was the start. He didn't just figuratively open the door. He literally opened the door to kind of my strength and conditioning career. And it wasn't just about physique and being strong. It was my mind. Like my mind was, I didn't think much of myself. I thought all I was here to do was drink and party and act a fool. And he was the first guy that said, you're more than this, kid. You got something in you that I see, and we just have to bring it out and develop it and nurture it. And that changed my life forever. So I've had multiple moments like that. And that's why if you're listening today and you are in a position to possibly open a door for somebody, mentor somebody, lead somebody in some capacity, like that is your God-given duty to do that and do it with pride. And the coolest thing about that story is, to this day, I don't even know that strength coach's name. I was
going to ask.
He wasn't in it for that. He didn't want accolades or accreditation for what he had done. He just said, man, I see some young dude that's struggling and I can help him. And he didn't even think about it for 2 seconds.
Wow. So one of the things that I wanted to tell you this, at some point when we were talking, but you have a presence about you, aside from what you do in business and the success that you've had there. And I've watched you on social and just your positive messaging. You know, I gravitate towards that. I see this smile. You're smiling a lot. You're a happy guy. I grew up, and I'll send you my story. Like a lot of people are, my listeners have heard it, you know, numerous times, but, I grew up with just a lot of challenging stuff, and life's hard. And, you know, depending on wherever you're at, if you don't have that sort of healthy male influence, or the other male influences are like, hey, let's go drink or let's go do this, it's really easy, you know, to fall into that. I've come to I think it was probably, 7-8 years ago where I kind of went in another hole again, because once you reach a lot of success, man, success is lonely, depending on how you deem that. It doesn't have to be, but when you're building things and you're grinding and you're putting in, burning that oil late at night, it's that loneliness also can get you into a spot. So I admire how much positivity, how much encouragement you have. And where do you think, so obviously that started from that, but how did you nurture that? You said that earlier, that you have to nurture it. And you've had several times in your life where men came up to you or people and encouraged you. So what are some of those along the way?
I think, there's everything's this nature nurture debate, right? Is it genetics? Is it the environment you grow up in? And obviously it's a combination of the two. My mom tells me stories about when I was 4 or 5 years old, how I had this kind of speed. That's what she refers to it as. She's like, you moved at a certain speed and it was hard to keep up with you. And she tells a story about my sister, like jumping down the stairs. And I think she was 4 years old and I was just to turn 2. And when you're 2, you can't jump, you could barely walk around. And I'd go up 4 stairs and try to jump, and I just like land on my torso, like flop. And she's like, son, you can't do that. You don't know how to jump yet. And I didn't listen to her. I just kept jumping and jumping and jumping. And so part of that's genetic. But obviously it's these mentors that have come along. One of my huge mentors was my martial arts instructor, Dale Burkhart. And he was there when my father died of prostate cancer in 96. It was a very difficult time for me. I was in graduate school, approaching finals, training to make my second national team. And then my father's battling cancer, and he lived in Washington, and I was in Colorado at the University of Colorado Health Sciences Center. And for anybody that's been through graduate school, it's not like ho-hum, here we go, a couple hours of homework here and there. It is all encompassing. And then I'm training for, 3 nights a week for 3 hours, to the point where I couldn't sleep till 1 a.m. because you get done with sparring. I don't know if you've ever experienced this. Yeah. People don't realize when you spar, you are switched on. Your sympathetic nervous system is on point. And so I'd get done sparring at 9, 10 at night, and I couldn't sleep till 1 a.m. And then you got to get up and go to graduate school and do it all again. And but after my father died, I called my coach. I said, Coach, I can't do it. I'm unraveled right now. And he said, Pete, we got nationals coming up in 6 weeks. And I said, I know, I can't do it. And he said, tell you what, I need your help. I'm like, what do you mean? He says, well, I need you to come help me teach class. You don't have to train. I don't expect you to train. Like he knew, right? He said, I just want you to come to class. It'd mean a lot. You're a mentor to a lot of these younger students, and I just need your presence there. I said, all right, I'll come to class. Maybe I'll help you teach, but I'm not training. And so I go to class. I taught for like 5 minutes, and I said, Coach, I'm training. And he tried not to smile because he knew what he was doing psychologically. I was too young. I didn't understand what was going on. But that's what I'm saying by mentor. Like they know how to lead you on the path to success. And not only did I train that night, it was kind of like, man, it lit a fire in me. I get goosebumps right now. And there was no shutting it down. And that's where, like you mentioned, people that are successful, it is hard to manage that because you get turned on and it's hard to shut down. And people from the outside looking in, they don't understand. Like they think you're obsessed. What's wrong with this guy or this gal? Launching a new business, maybe starting a new family, maybe training, maybe pursuing a hobby, a musical instrument. Like, why are they so immersed in this? And I think that's the beauty of life is, diving in. Don't, put your big toe in the water and test the temperature. Right. Freaking dive into that thing. And if you hit a rock, you hit a rock.
No, absolutely. So when you first came in, you noticed the guitar that we have in the background, and you said that music is something that you're learning, or you want to play lead guitar.
Not only is that a guitar, that's a Taylor Cutaway, and that's a bad asteroid guitar right there. Yeah, so I had a guitar when I was, I don't know, maybe 15 years old. And I played for 6 months. I really liked it. I mean, Eddie Van Halen was out. Everybody wanted to play guitar. And so I played for 6 months, and then I turned 16 and I didn't have a car. And I looked around at my assets in my bank account. I'm 16. I had very little money. I worked, but I didn't have a lot of money. And I sold my guitar and got a car, which at the time,
good choice.
Who's going to blame you? But looking back, it was the worst decision I ever made, because I could have walked and, eventually got in a car, and I'd be literally like Eddie Van Halen having played for that long.
Sure.
But long story short, I finally got to this point in my life where I said, you know what? I want to go back and revisit guitar. I love guitar. And so that's what I'm doing now. And so my quest right now, like one of my big 5 goals for this year, is to learn how to play lead guitar. And so get ready, man. We're going to be jamming soon.
I love it. So, the thing that struck me when you said that, you said, yeah, I want to be a person that's a well-rounded person. And, you got this martial arts background, you got this business background. Where does that belief system, where does that come from? Because I like when people think about that kind of stuff and they challenge them. Like, you hear everyone at the beginning of the year, I'm going to do this year. And then they fail before they even start, right? Which is a diet plan. But you have 5 goals, not 20. You have 5 that you want to hit this year. Now you're picking that back up, and you got an origin story with it. But where does that whole thought process come from?
I've never been asked that. I did read a book in my youth, and it was on Leonardo da Vinci. And I remember being just kind of dumbfounded by this book, because at the time I thought Leonardo da Vinci was an artist. He had all these amazing sketch drawings, and then as I started reading about him, he was a mechanical engineer. He was a civil engineer. He was an anatomist. He did one of the first cadaver dissections, and he drew out anatomy for the entire body. He was an artist. I mean, he was like this Renaissance guy. And in my mind, I said, man, there's something about that that's super attractive. And it's actualizing your human potential. And later I was an undergraduate psychology major. I thought I wanted to be a psychologist until I discovered sports and physical therapy. And so I kind of switched paths. But psychology was a great background for me. And I was introduced to this guy named Dr. Abraham Maslow. And Maslow was famous for his hierarchy of human needs. A lot of people have heard about this, and it's kind of a pyramid, an ascending pyramid. And on the base level, you have basic physiological needs, food and water, right? Everybody needs that as a base. And then you have shelter needs, like you got to have a roof over your head. And then you have these belongingness needs. In other words, you have a community around you, maybe parents or a stepfather, somebody that helps nurture you and kind of guide you along. And once you have all those basic needs met, that's when you start to develop your ego and your sense of self and who you are and what you want to do and who you want to be in the world. And then to actualize it, that's the top rung of the pyramid, and that's self-actualization. So the idea is you're kind of ascending up this ladder. Now, unfortunately, out of the 8 billion people in the world, 70% of them are impoverished. So they're literally living at this, how am I going to eat today? How am I going to keep a roof over my head? And they're going to have a hard time actualizing their human potential. But there's a lot of us, especially in America now, that, we get home from our 9 to 5, we sit on the couch, Netflix is on, we order Uber Eats, everything's a click, we're on social media, and the next day goes on and boom, it's the same routine. And to me, which is fine. I mean, there's no judgment here. But for me, the Leonardo da Vinci, the Abraham Maslow, man, what can I do? It's like a human science experiment with yourself.
Right.
I want to play guitar. I've always wanted to play guitar. And in my mind, I thought, I'll never be able to play Jimi Hendrix. It's just too far out there. And then I kind of stepped back and I said, why not? I mean, what's limiting me? My own belief?
Right.
Well, okay, so I get rid of my own belief, and then what's limiting me? Well, practice. So, I've gotten, granted, things are phasic, and that's one thing you people have to understand is, it's taken me a while to get to the point where I can now practice guitar 2 or 3 hours a day, because that's really what it takes. But also, most people, if they assess their day, it's like meal planning, and people say, oh, I've got a good diet. And you say, okay, write down what you ate today. And then once you write it down, you're like, maybe it wasn't as good as I thought it was. And the same thing with your day. You assess your day. How much time did you have today free? And you're like, oh, I didn't have any time free. And then, okay, write it down hour by hour. And you're like, well, gosh, I had a little bit of chunk of time in the morning. I did have an extended break at lunch. And then, gosh, after I got banged through some emails at night, I ended up watching Netflix. And again, no judgment, but man, you have time, you have capacity, and it's just the belief that's the limiting factor. And so to me, that is super empowering. That's the only thing that's limiting us is our belief. Well, that's easy to change. You just change your thought process.
I want to ask you, because I'm sitting here and I'm getting goosebumps in some of the stuff that you're saying, because there's a lot of alignment. But what do you think is maybe one of the hardest moments of your life that really what was the fire that you had to walk through that molded you into the man that you become today?
The biggest fire was, I almost reverted to my father's death, which was, tragedy. And that was a huge moment. But prior to that, I was attending middle school. We just moved from Connecticut to Colorado. So I didn't have any friends. I was new. And keep in mind, I'm now, I don't know, 12, 13 years old. I'm trying to become a man at this point. And so I'm in a new middle school, and I started getting bullied by this group of guys. And I don't know what, I just didn't fit in. I don't know what it was. I was late developing. I was kind of, I had that introverted posture. I wasn't confident. And so I was an easy target. That's probably why I was bullied. And one day after practice, a baseball practice, they locked me in the locker in front of everybody. They just manhandled me, shoved me in a like a gym locker.
Yeah.
By the way, try to fit in a gym locker. It's not easy. No. So somehow they got me shoved in there, and then they closed the door. And, I was kind of trying to laugh it off and just roll with it, because I didn't want to cry. I didn't know what else to do. So I'm in this locker, and I'm thinking, oh, somebody's going to open it up. Everybody's got some level of empathy right in them. And, 3 minutes goes by, nobody opens up the door. 5 minutes goes by, nobody opens up the door. 10 minutes goes by, the locker room starts to clear out. This is after school. And I'm so mortified and humiliated that I can't even speak. I'm just stuck in the locker. And the locker room clears out, and I'm alone in the locker. And I'm thinking, this is the worst situation I've ever been in. And all of a sudden I hear this kind of janitor, milling around. And there was this old dude, janitor at the school. And so I'm like, man, it's now or never. And I said, excuse me, sir, excuse me. And he looked startled. He's like, where's that coming from? He realizes it's some kid in the locker, and he opens up the locker. And I'm like, I'm a wet noodle, right?
Yeah.
And I'm trying not to cry. I'm trying to become a man as an adolescent. And he said, hey, son, chin up. Look at me. This is a janitor, right? He's getting paid minimum wage. And I said, yes, sir. And he said, man, this is a moment in time. This doesn't define you. And then he just went back to doing his job and walked off. And I was still humiliated and mortified and scarred for life.
Well, you're 12, 13.
That stood out to me. And so the point of the story is that we all have those moments in time that we can either elect to scar us forever and hold us back and be literally like a speed shoot on your back to the rest of your life. You have that crutch to fall back on. And I know most people have gone through much worse. So this is just an example. or it's fuel for the fire. And you asked about what fueled you. And I'm telling you, man, that fueled me like, and I've had a couple moments. Another one was at Littleton High School, my senior year. I try out for the baseball team. I get cut. My mom had just bought me new cleats, the kind of cleats that you can interchange the spikes, like put metal spikes in or plastic. And I thought I was so hot. And 3 kids got cut from our team, and I was one of them. And man, I walked away with my tail between my legs. But it was that year that I just said, okay, and I just doubled down on everything that I wanted to do. And I found martial arts. It was like a year later that I found martial arts. I started very late in life.
Yeah.
Most people don't realize that. I was 19 or 20 when I started martial arts. And by 24, I was at a world championship. By 27, I'd medaled at the worlds. And so the point is, you just have to, it's timing and it's pressure. That's one of my favorite quotes in the Shawshank Redemption. If you haven't seen the Shawshank Redemption, do yourself a favor. It's one of the greatest movies. And Morgan Freeman in there talks about Willie Dufresne, who escapes from prison. It took him like 20 years to chisel out of prison. And he was wrongfully convicted of this crime. And he chisels out of prison and hides the... anyhow, I'm not going to give the story away, but the point is he says life is like geology. It's time and pressure. A mountain can be deformed over thousands of years with erosion,
right?
But it takes time and it takes pressure. And so that's my motto in life. Guitar is hard, but it's just time and pressure.
Yeah, no, for sure. Well, let's, so you have kids, right? You have a few kids?
I've just got one daughter.
One daughter.
Only child. I mean, she is doted upon.
And she's going to college?
She is going to college this year.
This fall. But tell me about being a dad. And like, you do this martial art thing. You have, on the business side, it's all like well put together. But, if you don't mind sharing that story, I'd love to hear it.
Yeah, being a dad, it's just very humbling. And there's no handbook on being a father, right? There's a lot of books been written, but it's variable and there's always different circumstances. And so you find yourself being a father and almost everything in life, I use my deductive thought process. I sleep on things for a couple of days and I know the exact answer or the exact direction that I need to take. Being a father, sometimes you're still like shrugging your shoulders thinking, I think I got this right, but I don't know.
Yeah.
And so, and you're a father as well. And those are the challenges. But the biggest thing about being a father is just being there, man. Just showing up.
Yep.
I show up to her volleyball games. I show up to her school events, her DECA stuff, business events. I'm present in her life. I meet her friends. I know where she is and what she's doing. And I love her and support her. And then it's dosed with a little bit of like, hey kid, come on, let's get it together. Like this, if you're trying your hardest and you're getting a D, for instance, in school, then all right, let's get you a tutor and keep plugging away. If you're doinking around and you're getting a D, then I've got an issue. And then I can honestly look at you in the eyes and say, hey, is this the best you got? I mean, if it is, okay. But if it's not, then let's go and let's figure out a plan. And then it's not just hard love. It's like, all right, let's figure out a plan and path course so that you can get to where you need to go. And she's done remarkable. She had, I've fairly recently gone through a divorce, and that was very traumatic for the family, myself, my ex-wife, and especially our daughter. And there was a period there where it was extremely rough for my daughter, Brooke. And man, I just hung in and doubled down on I talked about phases, and there's times where I pour into myself and actualizing my human potential. And then there's times where I pour into me as a father and trying to bring out the best father in me. And I just doubled down and I said, hey, it's not about me right now. It's all about my kid. I got to get her through these stretches. And the next thing I know, she's doing better in school. She starts competing at a higher level in volleyball. She gets selected for the best club volleyball team in the state. She gets recruited by CSU to play volleyball. I mean, this all happened last year in 1 year. And 2 years ago, she was a B player sitting on the bench. So things, that's one thing about kids. If you have kids and you think, oh man, they're just, whether it's sports performance or education or just their maturity level, kids can develop at amazing cadences. And so, and I don't know if you remember, there was kids in high school where, it was, let's say you're a junior and then you come back for the senior year and you look at Johnny and you're like, dang, what happened to Johnny? Like he became a man over summer. And so kids can mature extremely fast on all those physically, spiritually, mentally, emotionally, intellectually. And so you just got to give them, you got to plant, water the seed,
yes,
right?
For sure. So with your daughter, you mentioned she was in DECA. Did she go down to the Springs for that thing about
They didn't make, that was a regional event, but she didn't do DECA last year. But she really got stimulated by it. And DECA, for people that don't know, it's a tremendous program, and it helps develop entrepreneurs and business mindset, and public speaking skills. If you can't speak and articulate yourself in front of other people, and I'm not saying you have to be a motivational speaker, but if you go to a job interview and you can't articulate yourself, you can't send the text message to the guy interviewing you or the gal interviewing you. You got to be able to speak from the heart and talk about who you are and what you want to do and where you want to go. And so DECA does that. And so this year she kind of manned up or womaned up and said, you know what, I'm going to try DECA this year. And she had a great time, and it was fun helping her get ready for some of those events.
That's awesome. Well, Jaron's been doing it. That's my younger son. And that I've seen just, even though he does have an entrepreneurial spirit, but the level of confidence, like when he walks on to any golf course or he goes and he talks, like he's doing some stuff with Mizuno now. And, he's only 18, but everyone's like, man, this kid's like 21 or 28, but it helps develop.
I reckon, because I was introduced to Jaron this morning by Santino, and the kid came down. I could tell he was probably doing something up in his room. He came down, especially to meet me. He looks me in the eye, shakes my hand, firm handshake, stares in my eyes and says, hey, nice to meet you. And I said, okay, we got a kid we can work with here, right? Like and that seems like a basic thing to do, but trust me, I've met a lot of teenagers over the last few years, and they don't have that presence about them.
Well, it's about being intentional, right? And it's hard to maybe necessarily know your worth. I think you find that through the fray sometimes with all the things that, happen in life. But we were talking about the dad thing, and I guess I can own this, that I felt like I had it figured out because I grew up where my dad, he went through some rough seasons, and I directly suffered some of the consequences for his rough seasons. And it's what pushed me into fighting. And I had all this anger and all this stuff. And once I didn't have the anger anymore, I love to fight and love to compete, but I was able to learn how to do it in a more healthier way. At the time, I was doing it in a very unhealthy way. But I think when you grow up and you do that, the first thing you learn how to do is you keep your guard up, right? When you get into martial arts, you learn defense usually first, just so you can keep coming back. And I think that can benefit you, but if you do it too long and you're always defensive, I'm speaking about life. Like, I think that's where I hurt my children in certain ways, in that, because I was very defensive, and it's like, well, no one's going to defend me. I'm going to just, I'm getting backed up into a corner. And through some spiritual work and some stuff that I've gone through, I've been able to look at my boys, and I'll try to get through this and just say, Aiden, hey, when you did this, that was actually wrong. But then my actions after that, where I just started yelling and getting pissed off, that wasn't about you. That was about me. And those are things about like self-awareness. And it's learning to like let that guard down and realize that like when you're dealing with those people that are super close to you, that they're not trying to attack you. They're trying to like figure it out, but they're also your kids and they just don't know. And you don't know what you don't know. But anyways, I think that's something that, as far as like being a dad, it's a humbling and it's a constant growing thing, because now they're men. Both my boys are men, and I'm trying to meet them where they're at. And I'm trying to like, hey, I got you, but not be the first one in to save them from trouble, because they have to fall on their face, and that's tough.
Well, and you mentioned something that was really cool there, and that is that you have humility. And a lot of people think that's a sign of weakness, is being humble, admitting fault, admitting mistakes. you taught your kids a valuable lesson when you have those conversations and say, hey, you know what? I was taking a step back and looking at this, and I did you wrong the other day, or I said I was out of line, or I'm sorry I raised my voice. That wasn't in my character. And I think there's a better way to resolve this conflict. And that was just, that was good for you, cathartic for you. But what did you just teach your kid? Hey, there's right ways and wrong ways to mend relationships and to grow with people interpersonally. And those soft skills are valuable. When you talk about developing relationships over a lifetime, that's what it is. I mean, you don't get to somewhere in life without having nurtured and fostered relationships. And that's why they say instant karma will get you. Well, it's not always instant, but over a lifetime, it's either, man, people say this is a good dude. He every time I engage with him, every time I ask something of him, every time we interact, there's a positive, aftermath. Or it's, man, every time I deal with this guy or gal, there's something a little shifty, a little shady, a little negative, a little pessimistic. So self-awareness is where that comes from. And then you develop empathy and accountability, and you start to get humility, empathy, and accountability. Now you've got this stable platform of your core values that you can start to get, like stand tall and speak with confidence about whatever it is you're doing, because you're coming from an authentic, organic place.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned it when you were talking about the pyramid. I think that there's a lot of people that want to get there, but they don't know how. And it takes that coach, that strength and conditioning coach, opening the door and saying, hey, do you want to go do that? Or you want to come train with champions? Like, there needs to be more of that. And
yeah. And what's crazy is, coaching, there's a coach for everything now. And with social media, it's gotten a little out of control because there's a money grab there as well. But on the face value, you do need a coach or a mentor or somebody, an advocate that helps you in certain parts of your life. And there's certain no-fall zones like accounting or finance, right? You better have somebody that knows more than you about money and finance and investment to maybe help nurture you and guide you along. Obviously, a doctor or physician or physical therapist or chiropractor if you're dealing with a hurt body. Spiritually, whether it's religion or psychology or something that helps you get in touch with your mind and what's going on with your internal dialogue and your emotions. And, for me, because I'm a businessman, I need entrepreneurial mentors and patent attorneys and people that can help me in those avenues. But I'm interviewing guitar coaches. So if you have a guitar coach, let me know. I need lead guitar lessons.
There's one guy I know from our church that if he's still doing lessons, he's your guy.
Okay.
Yeah.
We'll talk after.
Yeah, for sure. So, Pete, love the conversation. I would love to kind of hear more about like what today looks like for you. Like, what do you got going on? I know you shared a few things with me at the show, and I don't know if you can talk about that yet, but would love to hear what you have going on. And
so the two big things, literally today, we launched a certification program for Golf Forever. So if you're a teaching pro in the golf space and you want to learn a little bit more about the body and biomechanics of the body, if you want to learn how to properly warm somebody up, if you want to learn how to assess movement dysfunction, which is pretty critical for the golf swing, if they don't have the proper mobility in the hips and the thoracic spine, if they don't have some core strength, if they're not in balance, they're not going to have a full swing. They're not going to hit the ball flush. So if you want to learn more about that stuff and learn how to use the Golf Forever Swing Trainer, we have a certification program that is conjoined with the app, and it's remarkable. And that launches today. So that's really exciting.
That's awesome.
And the big thing for me is I've been working on a project in the shadows for 4 years now. And by the way, everybody thinks, you can just bang stuff out, or they see a finished product and they don't understand what it takes to get there. It's like training for a black belt or learning a musical instrument. They don't see you plunking around in the basement for hours and hours each day. They just see the finished product at an open mic night or at a martial arts competition. It takes hours. So I've been working on this business for 4 years, and I'm launching it this summer. It's a new product. Should I say the name?
You don't have to, but if you want.
It's called the glute slide.
Okay.
It's called the glute slide. That's all I'm going to give away. But the glutes, if you know anything about strength and conditioning, the glutes are the powerhouse of your core. So, walking, running, changing direction as an athlete, sprinting, jumping high, you need glute development. In fact, if you're a power lifter and you're interested in a squat or a deadlift, you better be training your glutes. And so, and by the way, if you want to look good in your wedding dress, or on the beach, come on, let's tighten things up. So it's called the glute slide. And I think it's my best product yet. So if you don't follow me on social media, follow Pete Holman 1, HOLMAN, the number 1 on Instagram, and you'll see a glimpse of this thing here probably in a couple months.
Awesome. So is that something that you're going to just take to market kind of like or are you going to be doing trade shows? Or I would imagine you're going to be in a ton of different spaces.
Yeah. And I think maybe part of that question is a lot of times I've licensed my products to other companies in the past. Like I've got a product called the Glute Drive, which I licensed to Nautilus, which is a huge manufacturer in the strength training world. And that's great because they've distributed, it's on it's all over the world. It's on 6 different continents, and they've done a tremendous job of distributing it, but they've also done a tremendous job of taking the majority of the revenues. And so this time I'm going to launch it on my own. I might have some distributors that distribute it for me, but it's going to be my product, my website, my content, and I'll be the captain of the ship on this one, which is it's scary, but it's really empowering too. And I think I'm ready for it at this point in my entrepreneurial, journey.
I love it, man. That's awesome. Going back to like Golf Forever, I was going to just throwing this out there, popped in my head as a question. So for the certification, like, is it just for golf pros? But cause like I see, Full Swing is a big Netflix documentary, and you see you got your swing coaches, but then there's like strength and conditioning coaches that are starting to use a lot of band work or whatever, but that would be great for that.
Yeah, it would be. The certification is geared more towards golf pros that really understand swing mechanics and swing deficiencies and swing faults. However, the app, just the general app, is strength coaches like myself taking users of the swing trainer through workouts, working on mobility, working on core strength, working on balance. And once you have all those kind of, again, foundational pillars, then you can start to layer in fluidity and speed and power and accuracy. And that's when you become explosively competent at golf and really any sport. I mean, if you're not training rotation and you're an athlete of any, I don't care if you're soccer, lacrosse, hockey, or mixed martial arts, throwing a kick, throwing a punch, man, all that power comes from the ground up, and it comes from rotational, connecting the kinetic chain from low to high. And the Golf Forever swing trainer, even though it's geared towards golf, man, it does it better than anything else on the planet, in my opinion.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I have my heavy bag over here, and I still, when you learn fundamentally how to throw a leg kick, like a back leg kick, or even like a push kick, it's from the hips. There's a lot of rotation. And the way that it was described to me, it's like throwing a baseball, and it's like that snap, like at the very end. And that's one of the things, like some of the best. We both know Dwayne Ludwig, K1, world champ. Like that guy is, you see him throw a leg kick, and you're in a room where you hear it crack a bag. You're like, whoa, just different. The
most interesting thing about athleticism, everybody thinks about the physique. They think about the strength, and the muscle mass. It's really the relaxation that gives you the power. Now, there's a pull. I mean, you have to have some strength, some internal strength and core strength, and you have to have balance, and you have to be able to pulse. But once you pulse and get your body, your limbs moving, you have to shut it down. And that comes from your central nervous system and training your neurology, not like your muscles. You actually want the muscles to be loose and relaxed. And that's why you see fighters warming up, and sometimes they kind of bend over a little bit at the waist and they just like shake their shoulders. Conor McGregor does it. He lets his arms be floppy. That's not a gimmick or a stage show. That's him being in this relaxed, super relaxed state where he can twitch and fire and whip at the end of his techniques.
Yeah, no, for sure. And that's one of the things that, like I see it in golf. Like bigger guys like myself, like initially when I started playing, like I love the game, but, or even drawing a bow, you get guys that just try to rip it back and there's like no technique. And really, like when you draw a bow, it's more of a push, and then you just kind of hold it right here. You're stretching your chest out. And with a golf swing, this new coach that I've started seeing, a swing coach, Derek Tolan, like if you let the body bring and you let the hips and that rotation bring it, and you just keep your arms relaxed, it feels like you're barely hitting a swing. Cause I think one of the issues that I had with like golf trips, and I kind of jump around, but I'd go play 18 or like 36 when we went to Bandon Dunes and did these big guys trips. And I'm just like smoked. My back's killing me. And there's guys that are 20 years older than me and they're totally fine, but they have rotational strength. They have good, they know what they're doing. I'm just trying to muscle it and I'm just burnt out. So your guys, like the Golf Forever trainer has been huge for me. It's helped my game tremendously.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah,
I'm so happy to hear that.
So, we're going to go do an ice bath here in a little bit, but we got your social media stuff, but are you like with any of the stuff that you're doing down south? Like, are you out of a gym, or I know you mentioned that. What else do you have going on?
So I'm pretty much full-time product innovation now and content development.
Cool.
To support those products. I mean, I've trained one dude in boxing. Somebody approached me and the guy's 78 years old. And I'm like, what? He wants to box? He's 78. I said, let me take a look at him. And I come to find out the guy spars. Now, I don't think they're doing headshots, but I mean, to be 78 years old sparring. And I said, let me take a look at him. And so I'm working with this guy and it's really fun because it gives me a little side project to work on and it kind of keeps me rooted in those martial arts. But aside from that, I've got a garage gym that, in my opinion, is the greatest gym on the face of the earth. I mean, I got ski ergs in there and I got my Nautilus glute drive. I got the Golf Forever swing trainer. I got a pull-up bar. I got suspension trainers. I've got a speed bag. Like I've got turf to move around on. And so I love having a gym at home. There's no excuse. I mean, the door is literally right there. And so I'm not saying it's always easy to cross that threshold, but the second I cross the threshold and I turn the music on in the gym and I'm kind of pissing and moaning the first couple minutes, and then all of a sudden it's on, right. and I'm ready. So I train out of there, and my kid trains out of Landau Performance, which is out in Centennial near the airport. And I've known Lauren Landau for years. In fact, a lot of martial artists train out of his facility. Gagey trains out of there. Corey Sandhagen. There's a bunch of guys and gals that train out of there. And so it's cool. I go in there with my kid and I see, I'm training next to Justin Gagey. I'm like, this is awesome.
That's great. Yeah. So you see, there's like football players that go there too, right?
Tons. Yeah. In fact, Lauren Landau was the strength coach for the Denver Broncos for a number of years, and now he's with Notre Dame. But there's a lot of NFL athletes and a lot of elite level Division I players and wannabe. Their bread and butter is developing younger players, adolescents. Like, if you're 16 or 17 and you want to play Division I, you've got a finite window to make it happen, and you need somebody really good. So you need like a Lauren Landau performance center to kind of get you ready for that next level.
Yeah, no, for sure. Well, as we wrap up, I try to ask any guest that comes on, like, and if we go into this for a bit, it's totally fine. But like, what type of advice for people that are listening, if there's a young person out there, male, female, and they're just going through some hard shit right now, or maybe they're goofing off and they're in the, they're you at your junior year where they're like, I don't know, I'm going to do that. I'm gonna go party. Or maybe it's, a middle-aged guy that's trying to support his family and he just feels like he's at that bottom tier of all those kind of things. Like, what would be some advice that you would give to them right now if they hear this?
One of my favorite quotes is, of course, a Bruce Lee quote. And he said, in any passionate pursuit, the pursuit counts more than the object being pursued. And that's always resonated with me because of a couple things. Number one, follow your passion. Like in any passionate pursuit, any pursuit worthwhile, you got to be passionate about it. And I don't care if it's collecting butterflies, learning how to cook, or launching a business, or finding a new partner, whatever it is, be passionate about it. And then it's the pursuit. It's not the end game. And that's the problem, is we all get enamored with this shiny object, the end goal. And how do I become a millionaire? How do I get 100,000 followers on Instagram? How do I reach these levels? And they're looking at the end game instead of all the most successful people in the world, whether it's Elon Musk or Steve Jobs or a professional athlete, LeBron James. They're not looking at a championship and playing at the NBA Finals. They're looking at, how can I get better today so that I can help my team today, tonight? And how do I do that over and over and over again? And then, oh my gosh, guess what? We made the playoffs. They're now playing Denver in the first round. However, but it's like, keep the dream alive. And it's the passionate pursuit that gets you there. It's not the end game.
Yeah. Like, to stay in the fight.
Stay in the fight, man.
Yeah,
you
keep
always
training.
I mean, and the other quote, because I'm a quote guy. I love quotes.
No,
so Alberto Tomba, I came up skiing in Colorado. In fact, I wanted to be a professional ski racer. That was my first love. And so I did tons of skiing growing up here. And years ago, Alberto Tomba was an Olympic medal ski racer. And he had his quote, and this guy was crazy. He was an Italian guy. He actually was known for, he was seen the night before a slalom final in the Olympics. He was seen at 2:00 in the morning getting out of a red Ferrari with like a girl or a couple girls. I'm not promoting that. I'm just saying he was out kind of on the town the night before a slalom race. What's he do? Wins the gold medal the next morning and then does a backflip, or maybe it was a front flip. Google that, in his ski boots. And I said, this is my guy. And so anyhow, his quote, he says, "In life, I have but one simple dream: to tear down the sky." And I thought, that was the most powerful thing I've ever heard. Like, I don't want to, reach the star, the sun, or the moons. I want to tear down the sky. Be bold. Like, if you're going to do something, get after it and pursue it with reckless abandon and see what happens.
Yeah.
You'll surprise yourself.
Yeah. Well, man, Pete, you're an inspiration, brother. I love your heart, and I want to do this again. But like at the end of the and with everything that you have going on coming up out here in a few months, we'll put links on this. We'll share everything. We'll share your social media. Obviously, that's not your new product. We're not don't have anything to share on that yet, but we'll keep people updated on it. So I really appreciate it, man. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you so much.
All right, let's go ice bath.
Cheers.